Hello, everyone. Geoffrey Nance here. Welcome to Word Wednesday. We're glad to have you with us. This is a time when we go into the Word and we begin to draw out business principles from the Bible. Today, we are going to be looking specifically at work. And this is a word that's listed well over 500 times in its various forms in the Bible. So that's a pretty good amount when you start to compare it to other words that are in there. And when we go back, let's just go back to the beginning here, Genesis. So we have Adam in the garden, and he's doing his thing. He's enjoying God's blessing, and in the midst of all of that, he looks up and realizes, I'm still missing something. God, being a good God, doesn't say, Adam, you're ungrateful. I'm not going to give you anything else. You've got plenty of stuff. No, he parades all the animals through, and Adam names all those animals. And at the end of that, there's a very curious phrase that a lot of people have glossed over through the years. And it says, and no suitable helper was found for him. It's kind of weird, right? So after this whole big zoo parade, Adam still hasn't found what he's looking for, right? And so God doesn't again say, "Well, you're ungrateful. I'm not giving you anything else." He says, "Fall asleep," and then he creates Eve. Adam wakes up and goes, "Wow, this is it's pretty amazing. Great job, God." And he's pumped and he's pumped. He's sitting there looking at Eve and he's like, this is now bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother, be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. This really cool statement here that's Genesis 2:24 that's used in marriages now, just, millennium later. And it's good. It's a profound statement. It's God's desire, right? And so we see that there, and yet it's not too much longer in the story before we see Adam and Eve sin. And as a result of their sin, one of the things that God says to Adam is that, you know, you're going to have to work really hard now, and you're going to sweat in order to have the food that you desire. And it's almost saying like, oh man, like so Adam had the ability to get this fruit, to work the land, but it wasn't hard. Now that's a curse. So he's going to have to work hard, and this is going to be part of this punishment for this sin. And then of course they're cast out of the garden. But even in that sense, we realize that God is still providing for Adam. It's not like he took the food away. He just said, look, you're going to have to work harder to have it. And I think that sets a good precedent for us, and that's kind of what we're going to focus on today. Is that we see um, throughout history that God is preparing people for certain works. You can see that as they're getting ready to build the tabernacle, that God has prepared people that have certain skill sets, and then He calls those people in to do that work. Some of it is very ornate work. And they have to have great craftsmanship, and God has prepared those people. He's gifted them with those abilities, and he calls them in and they do their work and they do it to the best of their ability. We see that once the tabernacle has been erected, that there are people that are called out from a specific tribe, and they are going to the tribe from the tribe of Levi. They are going to be known as priests. And even in that, God lays out, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. And he tells them specifically what your chores are, and that's their thing. And so even in this, we see that God is saying, look, people, I want you to work. We can just continue on through scripture, and we see that Solomon talks about work. He talks about how we need to be committed to our work. We need to find enjoyment in our work. We need to see it as fulfilling. And that's certainly true. We carry over into the New Testament. Jesus tells a parable. Obviously, it is a parable about heaven, but it's also a parable, I think, that we can take some elements from that and then properly apply it to us as well. And it's the parable of the workers. And he goes out early in the morning and he brings some people in, and he says, look, I want you to work in my vineyard, and I'm going to pay you this amount of money. They say, yeah, sounds good to us. He goes out in the middle of the day, says, hey, I want you guys to come and work for this amount of money. They agree to it and say, yeah, I'll do it. Then he brings in some people towards the end of the day. They only work just a very short amount of time. He says, look, I'm going to pay you this amount of money to work. And they agree to that. So everybody has agreed to work for a certain salary. And yet, when they realize, hey, we're all getting paid the same thing, now these workers become upset because they somehow think this is unfair. And yet, it's what they agreed to do. They agreed, hey, yes, we will come and work. We will come and work for this amount of money. Guys, this speaks to the heart. So, for those of us that do work, we need to realize that working is by God's design a blessing, right? So, yes, we are supposed to work hard. Yes, there are times when work is going to be hard. Yes, there are going to be times when we feel unappreciated, which brings me to my second point, which is the big point of today. As a worker, what is your motivation? What is it that drives you to want to work? What is it that you feel like you deserve as a worker? And does that approach then affect the way that you work? Now, certainly the Bible is clear that those who have others in their employees as their employees, they ought to recognize those that are skilled. Even in Proverbs, it says the one who is a skilled worker will work before kings and queens. Well, I think we can look at that very clearly and understand that when we have certain giftedness, that those that we're working for ought to recognize that and then to promote and give bonuses and etc. accordingly, right? And as the boss, for anybody that's listening out there that is a boss, that is one of your duties, is to recognize those people who are truly working hard, who are benefiting you as a business owner and benefiting those who are your customers. And then those people ought to be rewarded. They ought to be compensated and they ought to be just praised. Because again, in Proverbs it says that they would work before kings. So if you look at yourself and you say, "Look, I'm a business owner. How do I want to treat my employees? I want to treat them in such a way that they feel like coming to work for me is a blessing." And I look at them and say, "You working for me is a blessing." Guys, all of our workforces would be better if we had employees that truly desired to work where they work. They did a survey a few years ago, and basically they found that about 40%, almost 40% of people would do something differently if they knew they could get paid the same amount of money. What does that tell us? That tells us that most of us are going to a job, not because we like what we're doing, not because we necessarily enjoy the people we're working with, but because we get a paycheck every week or every 2 weeks, etc. So I'll let you guys ponder this. Is that the reason we should have a job? Okay. And if it is, that motivation, how is that really impacting the way that you do that job? I'm going to read from Colossians here, Colossians chapter 3. And yes, I understand it is a passage specifically dealing with slaves and masters, but it's not a very far leap for us to understand that a slave was somebody who was employed, if you will, right? I don't want to get into that debate, but they were employed by somebody else, and then obviously the master would take the role of a boss, right? In this case here, because they had people that were working for them. So in both of these scenarios, we're going to see one, how does Paul say, all right, that the slaves or the workers are supposed to work? And then how does he then tell the bosses that they're supposed to treat those who serve as their employees? So here we are in Colossians chapter 3. Obey your earthly masters in everything and do it, not only when their eye is on you and to win their favor, but with sincerity of heart and reverence for the Lord. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as though you were working for the Lord, not for men. Since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. Anyone who does wrong will be repaid for his wrong, and there is no favoritism. Masters, provide your slaves with what is right and fair, because you know that you have a master in heaven. Okay, so let's break this down here a little bit and understand the two varying roles that are happening in this particular passage. One, those that work for others, okay, we need to obey them, it says, in everything. And do it not only when their eye is on us to win their favor. This speaks to the heart now, but with sincerity of heart and reverence for the Lord. So we do our work not because we are getting paid by somebody else. We are working not just when they're watching us and trying to put on a show and impress them. We're working because we actually have a higher calling, a higher purpose than just getting a check at the end of every pay period. Our work should be, as believers, much, much bigger. We ought to work as though we're working for the Lord. And I want you guys to really ponder this and say, you know what, whatever my job is, whatever my role is, do I really think that every day I go to work, I'm working for the Lord? And how do I approach those hard days? How do I approach those hard customers? Am I really giving my best effort? Am I treating them the way that Christ would be treated? If Jesus was standing right here with me, would I do what I'm doing right now, or would I do something different? Would I talk to this person the way that I'm talking to them, or would I talk differently? That's what it's getting to. It's getting to the heart, saying, look, well, you might work for somebody else, but ultimately, as a believer, your work is for the Lord because you're one of His. So we work with sincerity of heart and reverence. I remember back in the day, I was an athlete, and we would have to run, and I hated running. I do it, right, but I still don't like it. All right, I'm just doing it to kind of be healthy, but I don't like it. But I remember we would run in soccer, and we would just run around the field, run around the field, run around the field, and we'd run around this field for 40 minutes straight. I don't even know how I did it. I don't know how I did it, but I know this, that the coach could only look one direction, and most of us would slow down when we got out of his viewpoint. And if he started to turn, then we would speed up again. But we were slacking anytime he wasn't watching us. And when I read this passage, I'm reminded of that. I was like, yeah, I was doing that. I was doing as little as I could because I wanted to do it, right? And I wanted to be faithful as a team member, but I wasn't really putting forth maximum effort. And that's what the Bible says here, that we shouldn't work only when our employees or only when our employer is watching us. We ought to be doing it with a full heart, with sincerity of heart, regardless of whether somebody is watching us or not. And it says here that we ought to work at it with whatever we do, work at it with all of our heart as though we were working for the Lord and not for men. Since we know that we're going to receive an inheritance from the Lord. And for those who are bosses, what is the Bible here say in Colossians that your role is? That you are supposed to provide for your employees what is right and what is fair, because you have a master in heaven as well. So regardless of your position, whether you are the one who has employees or you're as an employee, we need to understand that as believers, we have an ultimate boss, a master, and that's who we are trying to please. And we need to treat each other accordingly. So I want to encourage you guys, if you're working, work hard. If you're an employee, be a great employee, not just when you're being watched, but always, because you're not really working for that person. You're not working for a paycheck. Ultimately, our reward is in heaven. We're working as though we are really trying to please the Lord in what we do. And if you're someone who has people that work for you, understand, treat them right, treat them fairly, treat them as though the Lord treats you with, with honor, respect. Give them the things that they need to do their job properly so that they can excel and that everyone would benefit. That's our word for today. I want you guys to really think about that. What kind of worker am I? And what if you're self-employed? Still working for the Lord. Go be great at what you do. Work as though you're working for the Lord. And I'm going to close with this. We have an opportunity for you guys this weekend. It actually starts tomorrow. It's called the Word on Investing. It's a 3-day online presentation, and we've got people coming from all different sorts of backgrounds. This is a free event, but you do need to sign up. It's called the Word on Investing Summit. Want to encourage you guys, if you want to learn more about business in the Bible and learn from people that are out there doing this and putting into practice in different ways, join us tomorrow through Saturday. And again, you can check this out. It's called the Word on Investing. Do need to sign up for that. We'd be glad to have you join us. Thanks for being a part of Word Wednesday, guys. We'll see you next time.